about, just in case there's some new people, this is about two truths. This is not what I want to say is, this is very intellectual, academical, and kind of technical, but this kind of discussion is very important in order to deepen and strengthen the understanding of Buddhism. Love and compassion and meditation and mindfulness and non-violence and all of those, fantastic. They are just so venerable, they are so wholesome, something to be something never enough in the world. But those things alone doesn't make Buddhism. This serenity, gentleness, non-violence, this really does not make. Those are not a unique ingredient of Buddhism. You have to understand that. And just to emphasize, even the beloved mindfulness does not make Buddhism. It's a wonderful thing, of course. Mindfulness is a great thing. People should be mindful, of course. But if you want to study Buddhism, and if you really want to deepen your understanding of Buddhism, you have to understand, you have to really explore the truth, the technique and the system of how Buddhists sort of dig out the truth. Of course, ultimately, the purpose of understanding the truth is to liberate oneself from all the delusion. The purpose of pages and pages of Buddhist discussion on ultimate and relative truth has got nothing to do with intellectual satisfaction, like coffee shop conversation with cognac or whatever. It's just not just that. And for that, there are many, in order to actually get the truth, for the liberation, there are many methods. We have many methods, not because it's kind of fun to have lots of methods. It's not because of that. We have many methods because there are many different types of people who have a different capacity to relate and chew and digest these methods. As Longchenpa said, Yangna Lumpo Tepachen. If there's a type of people who, from the conventional point of view, they are not smart. They're kind of idiot. But this kind of person, for them, a genuine demonstrator of a truth can do it in the most unexpected way of demonstration of the truth, such as whatever, doesn't matter. Unfortunately, most of us are not these idiots. Unfortunately, we are somewhat a smart ass. And it is this, and that's the challenge. So we sort of have some sort of a understanding, and this kind of partial ability to comprehend makes life so difficult. So this is why Buddha himself taught so many different ways. Sometimes, many times, Buddha said things like, once upon a time when I was a rabbit, when I was a monkey. See, in those phrases, he indicates there is an I and there is a past life. Okay? Then there are other teachings, such as the Vajrachedika Sutra, where Buddha said, if someone thinks Buddha is a form and some sort of a consciousness, a being, they have a total misunderstanding. Again, this is something that the Oxford people would not accept. Because I think, to be fair to the Oxford people, generally the Oxford and they're so stuck with anything that has a record. If you go to anthropology department, that's all there is. Record. That's all they study. Record. As if that's the ultimate truth. The Roman records, the Egyptian records, Babylon records, all these records. If they find some sort of records, if they could dig it out from some unknown desert or whatever, then they just fall for it. Bear in mind, record is to trust a record is really very dangerous. We never know how those Romans carved. It may be carved on the stone, chiseled out from the stone, but we never know this carver, what kind of state they were in. The Romans eat and vomit and eat and vomit. And we have to trust to these kind of people's carving. Now, India has never been good with the record. Still today, I'm sure, they are not so good with the record. Even as I grew up, when I was studying Buddhist philosophy, not keeping a record is actually a pride. It's a matter of pride. We are told everything you have to learn by heart, because this is a spiritual path. What's the point of writing it down, carving it on a stone? You learn by heart. You learn by mind. So this is what has been emphasized for hundreds of years. And of course, now this is being laughed at. And in a way, you can say it's backfiring. Here, I'd just like to tell you, at the end, you are your own master. You have to use your own intellect to, value whatever you are pursuing. Only you can do it. You have to be critical and analytical. You can't afford to be a sycophant. The Buddhist philosophy study is actually a study to make you learn the tools of how to analyze, how not to be sycophant, how to be critical in a good way, productive way. Anyway, coming back to the subject here, we are trying to establish, we are learning the art of establishing the truth. For the sake of analysis, we are given two ways to think of this. By dividing the truth into ultimate truth and relative truth, and which, by the way, I remind you, are both relative truth. Which, by the way, you can always argue saying that this is you Buddhist term, like two truths. Why can't we have 3 truths or 5 truths? Sure, no problem. But, more likely you will have to end up agreeing the 2 truths. Fake or non-fake, this. Okay, so we were talking about the relative truth, and we were talking about having 2 kinds of relative truth. And at the moment we are trying to sort of characterize or define what is a valid relative truth. What makes relative truth, valid relative truth? What makes something valid relative truth? And we talk. So there are 4 different reasons. There are many others, but in this text we are presenting 4. Consensus, function. Because of the function, that's why it's something. That's why it's valid. Shoes, for instance, valid relative truth because it functions as a truth, as a shoes, not as a glove. And also that which is product of cause and condition. So this is, and that's quite important because we are talking about order. order. Marigold, you plant marigold, marigold comes out. You know, that kind of order. And that, actually the third one is a very big subject. In this subject we talk about the karma. Again here, there's a lot to say about the British, but we don't want to dwell on too much on this one for now. By the way, when I say British, I'm not talking about Manchester United or Chelsea football clubs. I'm talking about the British Buddhist, and especially those who are holding prominent positions, who are supposedly teaching some of the best university in the world, like Oxford, Cambridge. And sometimes, I really feel that they are sort of a closet extremist who are teaching Buddhism. Anyway, let me cool down this one, As I'm getting old, I'm getting really, so strong about this. At the moment, I'm only using generic term like British Buddhists. Very soon, in about a year, I'm going to actually name them and put their birthdays and address and everything. And really, you need to hear this, because especially the younger generations, the university students, you need to hear this. Okay. The fourth reason, which we used the word falsifiable yesterday. What makes a valid relative? What makes something valid relative truth? That which can be, we use the word falsifiable. That which can be falsified, and is really, really the most important reasoning. So important. It actually, even practically speaking, if you are a meditator, if you are a practitioner, this argument will help you. Basically, everything we accept as a valid relative truth, like chairs, shoes, whatever, doesn't matter, the floor, the ceiling, the Bodh Gaya, the path, the enlightenment, the death, the birth, the old age, the sickness. If you analyze them, they fall apart. We will do it. We will analyze it. The very famous analytical method of Chandrakirti, the 7 analytical method of chariot, for instance. Like a chariot, which you can see here, by the way, not as a decoration, but as actually a functional thing. Chariot. If you analyze, is the wheeled chariot, is the horse chariot, is the, like each and every single bits and pieces, if you slice them, deconstruct them, you will not find a single entity that which is real chariot. What is the word caprice? Caprice? Whim? Whim. What does that mean?
A little thing of no consequence. Without reason.
Without reason. So it's arbitrary. Arbitrary?
Yeah. It can be. But caprice is like, it's not necessarily arbitrary, but it isn't profound.
It's not profound. Okay, good. It's just imputed from impulse, right? It's So, according, so relative to the valid relative truth, one of the aspects of the valid relative truth is actually everything is just an arbitrary. It's just, and it works, by the way. I'm not saying it doesn't work. Chariot works as a chariot. You can ride on it and it will reach somewhere. All of this. But all this happens on an arbitrary projection of an impulse, caprice, whim, whatever you want to put it. It's like, temporarily just sort of hanging together, like. And we are saying that all of us is an arbitrary projection, impulse, a projection of impulse. All of us. And not only just human beings, everything is an arbitrary. Mata mache nyamgawa, we call it in Tibetan. Mata mache nyamgawa, without analysis, without any, like digging out, trying to find whatever is the truth, like slicing, deconstructing. Nyamga is like just accepting as at its face value, so to speak. But it functions. It has an order. This is how everything exists, as arbitrary as whatever I've been saying. The shoes, the chariot, enlightenment, Buddhism, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, all of this. I have to say this, reincarnation. And I have to say this because the British Buddhist, those who call themselves sort of non-religious Buddhists, whatever, they claim themselves Buddhists, but they always shy away, or they sort of look down at the concept of reincarnation as it is something to do with the Tibetan thing. This proves that they have no idea about what is relative truth. If you do that, you are underestimating relative truth. If you underestimate relative truth, you become nihilist. You have the full potential wearing an explosive around your waist and blow up yourself. You are an extremist. These British Buddhists are extremists. I'm telling you, you can carve it on your door or something. If you, of course, just because we are talking here, if you overestimate ultimate truth, you are also an extremist. To put it on a more layman's language. You see, this is what happens with these British Buddhists. This is what they do. They wear I need a help. Rowan, what's that sort of, not a beret, but something that the British always wear, that hat?
Polar.
What? Polar. Yes. What? Bola? Bolan? Yes. They wear a Bolan hat. They're usually kind of bald. And then they begin with saying like, oh, like. And you know what? They take pride. You see, they laugh at reincarnation, and they take pride in laughing at reincarnation as a result of analysis. This is why it is wrong. Because if you analyze, forget reincarnation, there is no Bolan on the top of his bald head. So to say, and these are the same people who promote mindfulness, by the way, as if this is the thing that saves the world. And if you analyze the mindfulness, it does not exist. Because mindfulness is an arbitrary, imputed by impulse. This is why when you meet next time these people, you should really check what they are wearing on their waist. And imagine these are the people who are actually teaching to some of the biggest learning centers in Europe and getting paid with the taxpayers' money. Because they have a degree. Anyway, going back to the real thing. But this is really important. Really. Relative truth is an arbitrary projection of impulse. Mata mache nyamgawa, we call it. Okay, no analysis. Okay, so what is the invalid relative truth? Now, this one is a difficult one. Okay, first, just as an, briefly, just an example, valid relative truth, I've already said, like the moon on the sky, in the sky, and the invalid relative truth is like a painting of the moon or a reflection of the moon in the mirror or the lake. The opposite of the fourth thing, consensus, like the painting of the moon, it doesn't work. It has no function. And even if you talk about consensus, nobody will say this is a real moon. It doesn't function as a moon. It's not it doesn't of course it is a byproduct of a cause and condition as a painting of the moon, but it's not the real moon. And also you can deconstruct the arbitrary imputed painted moon, but you cannot deconstruct this as a real moon. You understand? Basically, you don't have to tell anyone that this is not real moon, right? Okay, but now that's kind of easy to understand. But now this is a very big argument in the Buddhist study. Okay, so for a Buddhist, this lotus is a valid relative truth. The God, the Almighty, the Creator, which is imputed by the religious people, is not even valid relative truth. It is invalid relative truth. Now this is really big. Within the Buddhist, if you ask a guy like Chandrakirti, he would say anyone who is not a follower of Chandrakirti, but Nagarjuna, their thesis, their view is invalid relative truth. Now this is a big statement. This has, there's so much argument. But here, because of, again, always the time, I'm only presenting you this definition of this two relative truth, valid and invalid, very briefly. There are so many different studies and deeper studies on this. So just to give you an example, okay. For the Buddhists, especially Mahayana, they would say like this. Like a samsaric life, whatever we have, like wealth, health, body, all this is valid relative truth because you can use it, function, there's a function, because you can use it as a base of things like impermanence meditation, because it is impermanent, it is decaying, it is falling apart, all that. Whereas concepts such as Almighty Creator is totally useless. Again, I want to remind you, ultimately, there is no such thing as relative truth and ultimate truth. Okay, just a few, remember I was saying, there's a much deeper studies on these two relative truths, not ultimate. We are not touching the ultimate truth here. Valid and invalid relative truth. Okay, I will just choose one. We are now being very specific. So this is a little technical and it's going to be a little difficult, but just for a taste of how deeper we can study, so to speak. Okay. Let's say a practitioner. How does the relative truth functions with a practitioner? A practitioner, okay, a struggling practitioner, when he or she sees or hear or tastes things, but do all of that with mindfulness, then what he sees, what he hears, what he sees, what he hears, what he tastes, what he feels, all of this is valid relative truth. Every time he doesn't have a mindfulness, all of that is invalid relative truth, such as the daydream. Your mind goes out, your mindfulness is already gone, you are entangled, you are planning. Okay, I'm explaining this because there's quite an important reason which I will tell you later. Once you reach the first bhumi, then A practitioner who has reached the first bhumi, for him or her, all the perceptions during the post-meditation time is valid relative truth. Remember? Definition of relative truth? Deceiving, cheating. It's a deception, right? It's cheating, it's not true, it's a delusion. So, this raises a question. So, does the 10th Bhumi Bodhisattva during the post-meditation time, is his experience deceiving, cheating, delusion? Yes. Then, all the Buddhist fanatics will go, wow, how can that be? They are great bodhisattvas. They do not accumulate any more cause of delusion, but the effect of the previous emotion and the grasping still there. Like if you keep a sandalwood in a box, and even if the sandalwood is gone, the smell of the sandalwood remains. Okay, the reason why I need to tell you this is for the Buddha, there is no valid relative truth. Does that mean that he only sees the ultimate truth? No. Remember, ultimate truth and relative truth is relative truth. For the Buddha, he can't understand why we are talking about relative truth and ultimate truth. What is that? What's the complication for? Even though this was taught by him, you understand? For the Buddha, distinctions and the boundary of the true truth is exhausted. Just to, because I know there's so many Tantrikas here, anyway, who claims the visualizations, deities, no matter how many heads they have, no matter what kind of, incredible, attributes they hold, they are all valid relative truth. Actually, there's an argument. Some say, I don't want to go to that argument right now. They are valid relative truth, they are arbitrary, they are imputed from an impulse. They are usable, by the way. Okay? Now this is, of course, a very, very generic understanding of deity. If there's anybody who wants to defend British Buddhist, now is the chance.
So Rinpoche, you talked about the valid relative truths and therefore characteristics, and the first three is kind of understandable from our daily life, but the fourth one, falsifiable, can you explain, because it's quite hard to understand.
As I said, like the chariots, if you deconstruct, you will not find the, one that you call real chariot. That's it. Albert is an ex-student of one of those British.
You better check if I've got any bombs around my waist. No, actually, I just wanted to ask, from a very mundane practice point of view, how do we apply this to, on a day-to-day level when we have arisings of disturbing emotions? How can we actually apply it? Is it more like doing analytical meditation of your analytical analysis of the kind of, because disturbing emotions would be valid relative truth in this reckoning.
Yeah, like you said, for a lot of people it works as an analytical thing. Also, it's always good to establish the view. But the most important is for a practitioner, especially in the Mahayana Buddhism, the biggest thing that you should be really, really be cautious of after many, many years of meditation is coming to conclusion. When you come to a conclusion, it can be very dangerous. This is why, like even the Mahasandhi, Dzogchen Buddha, they say, as long as you think this is it, it's never it. And this kind of thing always helps. That's why I'm telling, like the British people who, I think in English they have this expression called cherry picking. It's exactly that. The mindfulness, this is all right. It's, like, this is something they like. Reincarnation now, that's, because that goes against their whatever, you understand, that monotheistic gene. And then they get rid of it. That's absolutely criminal. I get torn apart. Because, the non-violence, the mindfulness, Buddhism, it's kind of a good packaging. So in this way, it's sort of, helping Buddhism, sort of good image, it's like, so, I like to keep quiet. Because if you lose this analysis, and if you only teach mindfulness as how it is taught at the moment, I could really turn around and argue about mindfulness being the ultimate cause of constipation. I'm serious. If you lose this argument, it is the cause of constipation. I'm serious. Because, you're just so paranoid that you are not mindful. Like, that alone must be killing you. The effortlessness, the path of the Sugata, effortlessness. Like, instead of, I don't know how to use it, this tight, that sort of confined, puritanical. That's not Buddhism. I mean, how do you measure what is mindfulness to begin with? It will become very dangerous, I'm telling you. Okay, any more other? Okay, Badri. Actually, Badri, I want to ask. Oh, you want to ask first? Yeah, why don't you ask?
My name is Amitav, and actually I follow different tradition. I have Bitcoin, but I try to speak clearly. I wanted to ask you one question. You said that all truths are relative truths, right? So, do you think that it is because the essence of teaching is beyond mind and speech? Man aur vani se pare. It's beyond mind and speech. The essence of teaching is beyond mind and speech. Do you think that? That's why we can say everything is a relative truth, right?
Because we are having problem hearing. Are you saying that because of mind and space?
Because the essence that we are talking about in teaching, ultimate truth, that is also relative. But whatever truth is there in teaching, that cannot be explained by mind or by speech. Does it mean that?
Yeah. The ultimate truth cannot be that that aspect that cannot be taught. That actually is not exclusive to Buddhism, by the way. So-called Hinduism also has that, and I think like the first shloka of Tao Te Ching.
If you permit me one more question, sir.
Yes.
What I think that whatever we see from mind is basically name and form, right? So that's why it's a relative truth. Is it correct?
Yes. Whatever we see, the moment we think, we see, we hear, it always ends up becoming a thing at the moment. That's why you are right. That's why it's so difficult to get out of this zone. But there is a way. There is a way. There's many ways, not only one way.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, actually, I want to expand this a little bit. So whatever we see, hear, taste, feel, It's a thing, and the thing is a zone. We are already in this zone, and we have to get out of it. And so we feel sometimes, how? How can it be possible? Because even to wanting to get out is a thing. You might find like you are in a prison because there's just no way out. No, but there's no access, somebody can come in and rescue you. You understand? You are like completely in this thing zone. But actually, this is where I think Buddha excels. What he's saying is this thing zone, everything has its own fault. And we have to take advantage of that fault. So, you understand, it has a fault. Right now we are not taking advantage of this fault. We are trying to mend the fault. We are trying to fix it and fix it and fix it. But actually it's like all this thing is a self-destructive, actually. They will destroy each other. We just have to take advantage of that. Then it will fall apart. When it falls apart, there is no such thing as outside of this zone. Because when there is no this zone, there is no outside of this zone anymore. To give you an example, like impermanence meditation. We are bringing nothing from outside. Impermanence is the character of this zone. And we basically take advantage of that. Meaning we use the character of the samsara to destroy the samsara. All the way to guru devotion. Guru devotion is an emotion. Again, it is this thing, is a zone, is within this zone. And we use the guru devotion to deconstruct the guru devotion, the paraphernalia of guru business. Yeah, you have to learn to use the samsaric virus, so to speak, to harm themselves. Of course, it's not that easy because there's that habit that, we can fix it. Basically, so-called ngondo practice is a repetition of practice of I can't fix it. Just this morning I told somebody to chant 1 million times, I can't fix it. If you feel like doing, why not? Badri?
Rinpoche, I am most grateful for your teachings. It really felt like the lion's roar, and it really put the Monlam in the correct perspective for me. Thank you. To clarify, you mentioned that for the first Bhumi Bodhisattva, the post-meditative experience is that of valid relative truth. What about the meditative experience of the first Bhumi Bodhisattva?
We will be talking about it tomorrow. Are we teaching tomorrow? Yeah. We will be teaching about this tomorrow, but it is something to do with a union. Well, anyway, the meditative state of the first Bhumi Bodhisattva has no concept of relative truth and ultimate truth. Okay? But, because he is not the Buddha yet, he slips into post-meditation. But as Chandrakirti said, talking about these first Bhumi Bodhisattva onwards, we said, Cheji Samadini Nyeji Malaso. It's like, right, this is Chandrakirti, okay, this is not me. He said the arhats are like a small insect that makes a small hole in a wood, and then they stay inside the wood, and they think that this is the sky. And then talk about sky. You understand? These insects, the sky, the vast sky. You understand? That's how it is, the arhats, when they talk about emptiness and the meditative state of the, first Bhumi, it's a bit like that. Many times the first Bhumi Bodhisattvas will willingly, happily slip into post-meditation time. Because it is in that time, in one moment, they can see 100 Buddha and listen to 100 different teachings. So it must be a lot of fun, you know. Any other questions? Yeah.
No, this is a delicate one. I think I heard you say that if the British Buddhists don't understand reincarnation, they don't understand relative truth. Is that right?
If they say, if they cannot accept reincarnation after analysis, meaning they are violating the game of relative truth, then they cannot understand the truth. Then they become nihilist.
The four tests of valid relative truth, Rinpoche, I'm not quite clear on whether something has to pass all four tests to be valid, or whether there's some kind of priority, or whether it's just one of the tests.
That's good, yes. Actually, I think one is all. Yeah, it's just for the sake of study. This is not only it. There's so many other categories. That's why these monks, they spend 9 years studying just this, and they never get a job afterwards. Because it's
But then if I have consensus with a couple of people that doing circumambulations is not helping with anything, and that's my experience, there's no function there, then that's valid relative truth for me, for everybody?
Yes.
Right. So valid relative truth and invalid relative truth can be different for different people?
Yes, it's very, very, yeah. Now you are going really deeper, finer and finer point, yes. It overlaps a lot. Because we are talking about relative truth, arbitrary, impulse, caprice, whim, remember? That's why I was saying you have to talk about, you have to sort of accept the reincarnation on that level. Because if you analyze and say this does not exist, you are in a trouble.
But if you analyze it and you accept if you just accept heaven and hell or something as an alternative model which supports you and works for you, then that's fine. I mean, you might not be a
Do you want
Buddhist.
to translate that verse? Actually, yeah, that's important. Last one. Yes. The Helen. Yeah. Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, so I was saying, if you don't accept reincarnation, but as an alternative model which works better for you, can you just use heaven and hell, for example? Is that okay?
Okay. Now this is opening up some Pandora box here. Okay. See, the thing is this: if you do not accept reincarnation, you are talking about not accepting a continuity, which means you are automatically asserting the ultimate end. That is the problem. So those people, those so-called atheists or whatever, who sort of pride themselves not accepting the reincarnation, they, without knowingly, they end up becoming theistic, actually, almost, because then you almost like, by consequence, they end up believing in Armageddon. So that's what I mean by, so what's the point of cherry picking the mindfulness? Why be mindful if there's no reincarnation? Why not just go out and rob bank and, do whatever? As long as you are not caught, which you can try your best not to be caught. And a lot of people get away with it. Why behave? It's so painful to behave. Because more specifically, to answer your question, the hell and the heaven that you are talking about sounds like it's the end. Then it won't work. Ultimate end won't work. Because if you believe in the ultimate end, you are, by consequences, you are not believing that time is relative.
Okay. I'll give it to somebody else.
No, you can ask.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not. It's not the specifics of heaven and hell. I'm worried. I'm not suggesting that that's a better model. I'm just trying to understand whether it's the specifics of the. It's just about finding the best model. You know, I'm trying. And the specifics of the reincarnation model.
I think. Okay. To be fair, I forgot to be fair, by the way. I think the word reincarnation got contaminated by the Tibetans a bit, which I accept. Because there's something called a reincarnate tulkus and all of that. Yeah. The reincarnation is really, the Tibetan word for reincarnation is yangsi. Yangsi. Again, meaning again exist. As simple as that, again exists. Basically, we are talking about a continuity. And continuity is an arbitrary. Wow. Things like continuity, infinite, all. These are some of the prize-winning arbitrary stuff that we came up with. It's just so ridiculously arbitrary, but it's just so much used. What do we mean by all? What does that mean? What does it include? All. All are welcome. You know, like the all. What does that mean? Infinite. By the way, I mean, you don't think that this is just some, intellectual sort of words, throwing back and forth. Because, for instance, like ourselves, we have this notion that today's me is yesterday's me, the same thing, which is another absurd thing. What do we mean by same anyway? If you look at all our words, it's all vain. I mean vague. All our words are vague. Same. What does that mean? Because I went to toilet yesterday, does that mean that I don't need to go today? This is the same person, right? That's not true. We cannot also say that we are two different entities. Yesterday's me and today's me. Again the same thing, but it's different. So all this, now these are really a good description of relative truth. Better not analyze too much. Because if you analyze, you fall into the ultimate. And then the Vajrachedika wins. I mean, when I say better don't analyze, I'm saying as in, since we are trying to establish what is relative truth, to understand what is relative truth, better not analyze. Of course, as a practitioner, that's the purpose. We analyze. Okay, yeah.
Just one more. So relative valid truth. Is it fair to say that the power of prostrations is in the consensus element of it, and that if I genuinely came to believe and therefore experience that doing press-ups, for argument's sake, had got rid of my pride, then that would be equally functional?
Yes, because, probably not so much of the actual act of falling and folding the hands together. That is just a trick. It's a necessary ritual trick until somebody came up with another idea.
So it's just the consensus then?
Wait, I'll first say this. Consensus in this case is like, pride is not a good thing. Everybody sort of agrees that. Falling down at the feet of somebody is, really, really a big, sacrifice. So let's do that 100,000 times, on that level kind of consensus. So for this reason, to be Buddhist does not mean that you have to have 100,000 prostrations. You have to defeat the pride. And if that means something else, like cooking omelette 100,000 times, if that's what it requires, then that's how it, that depends on your own individual coach. Okay, I think this will, one more. Yeah. Okay. Rowan. 2 more, this and here, and then we will finish. Okay.
I'm stuck between 2 questions, but I'll take the more straightforward one.
You have to represent the British.
Well, I was wondering, and I can't represent the British, but my brothers and sisters in Britain properly, but I really was wondering whether you were being fair to them, because I just was wondering whether their view, they're saying, and I really don't know, they're saying there's no reincarnation, but I was wondering whether they were implying that the perhaps Tibetan view of reincarnation is very much about one person becoming another person, and that they're not against Yangtze. They don't believe that there's an end, but just the continuation is more subtle. And if you said, well, how does that affect behavior? I mean, why is it important to behave in a certain way? As long as time is relative, the reason it's good for me to behave well is to stop my world from becoming a hell realm. You know, it doesn't matter that if you say, well, it's going to end at that point, it doesn't all end. We transform into different forms of energy. My memory will maintain in different ways. It doesn't just end. It's just, I can't have if I was a person of great merit, there would be no actual tulku of Rowan. You know, and I think that they gesture towards...
Can you repeat the last bit? No, I really missed it.
It's not an appropriate image. I was saying, if I were a person of great merit,
right,
and I died, and I managed to become, through you, a great practitioner, the British Buddhists would say there wouldn't actually be a tulku of Rowan. You know, it's just a rather useful thing to continue things. They're a bit suspicious of all that. But they don't say everything just ends. There's no feeling that Yangtze, that there is no continuum. And when you say, well, why should you behave? Well, the reason you should behave is because of cause and effect, because you will, if you behave badly, you'll create bad...
Oh, I see, yeah. Yeah. If you believe in that kind of continuity, yes, definitely you should behave. But what I'm saying is, if, through the analysis, you see, it's the consequence thing. You see, my argument is this: you accept the mindfulness, which is as arbitrary as reincarnation. By accepting the mindfulness and by sort of not accepting the reincarnation, it implies to me, you understand what I'm saying? That this does not exist and this exists. And this is a dangerous. Because if reincarnation does not exist, meaning if there is no continuity, then you become, there are actually Buddhists who says that you will become part of the dust and the particles and the part of the universe and all of that. I'm serious. There are many Buddhists who says that, and it is wrong. Well, why, what's the difference between a hoodlum in New York and the gangsters in London and the practitioners in Bodh Gaya practicing, we will all become a part of the universe anyway. And those guys are having a lot of fun. And here we are in the dust. We are missing a lot. Anyway, we are going to be part of the, particles of the universe. So why not? Why behave? That's what I'm saying. I will have to extend my battlefield a little bit here.
Rinpoche 要在这里扩充他的战场。
People the Buddhists who believe that we will become part of, particles, part of the universe, is not just British Buddhists, it's French and Vietnamese. And I'm sure as I get old, more fanatical and more desperate and more frustrated, in the very near future, I will be mentioning the names. If you become parts of the universe, particle of the universe, the whole point of the 1,000 Buddhas coming under the Bodhi tree is wasted. Total waste.
When you say you there, Rinpoche, to what independent functioning entity are you referring to?
What are you trying? What did you say?
Rinpoche, when you said, well, if you become particles of dust, which isn't what I'm implying, but what is the you you're referring to? What is this? Is this independent entity the thing that is going to become reincarnated?
Well, I would not have any problem if, because you see, my you know, are you talking to me or the Vietnamese? Because they will have a problem of answering your question. Because their you does exhaust. My you is an arbitrary. It's an impute, impulse, arbitrary, caprice, whim. Remember? It's a real whim here. And for me, my position is totally intact. Therefore, my you can be analyzed and then can get realized the, egolessness, you-lessness, basically. Whereas these people, they will have no you-lessness, because there you become a part of the particle. There you become bigger. At least my you is only 157 centimeter, and like this. There you will become the big universe. My God, the big problem. If these Vietnamese become as big as this universe, and the French, we will have so much blue cheese.
I have a different question regarding the Mahabodhi temple and the tree we are sitting beneath. If you could give us some explanation how we can get most of this place.
If I can explain?
Yeah, if you can give us some more details about this auspicious place. Buddhists
believe in cause and condition. Everything is cause and condition in effect. This is one very supreme cause and condition. This is a cause and condition that you will share with 1,000 Buddhas. This is a cause and condition that you directly share at this right now with the Shakyamuni Buddha. And it has to be cause and condition because you, instead of drinking beer somewhere in Germany, you are here. You are pulled, pushed. So, this cause and condition need to be taken advantage. So you can also pray and aspire that one day you will also be just like all these 1,000 Buddhas. Supposedly a very, very special place here. Okay, well, I'm sorry, sometimes I get get carried away a bit and sounding more and more like Suresh and SP. I try not to have conversation with them, but somehow the karmic link and debt seems to pull and push towards them. Okay, so tomorrow.